Received. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order the Salem Kaiser Area Transportation Study for Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. And we will do introductions for the record, and we'll start with Kim
Sapinar, SKATS staff.
Mike.
I'm sorry, Mike Jaffe, SKATS staff. Steve Dobrinich, I'm SKATS staff as well. Jackson, SKATS staff.
Kathy Clark, Mayor Kaiser.
Commissioner.
Anna Henson, ODOT.
Councilor Phillips.
Trevor Phillips, City Councilor for the Salem.
Director Carney.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sadie Carney. I am a transit director for the Chariots Board.
And Brendan Williams.
Hi, Brandon Williams, ODOT Area 3 planner for Marion, Polk, and the Yamhill counties.
Janelle. Sorry. Thank you.
Janelle Shanahan with Marion County.
Mark.
Mark Bernard, ODOT Region 2 Principal Planner.
And Tammy.
Tammy Kunz, Greater Northeast Kaiser Neighborhood Association, and Jackie Green Vice is with me as well.
All right. Thanks for everyone for joining us today. So the first item of business is the approval of the policy committee minutes from June 27th. There was an email from Director Carney.
Yeah, thank you. No, I just submitted a small correction. It was all otherwise looking accurate. I was just hoping not to have the omitted sentence omitted and included instead.
Can you remind me, and I'll put it on the record, anybody who hasn't seen that, what that was.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me find the email. On page 7 of the notes, when I was reviewing the YouTube, it reads, she, meaning me, informed the policy committee that the Salem Area Mass Transit District Board, SAMTD Board, voted unanimously last week to support a facilitated process to update the cooperative agreement and bylaws. And then the YouTube video went on, but the minutes did not. And I'm suggesting the addition of with the intention of arriving at a more representative and equitable decision-making process and structure.
So was that in the motion from the Salem Area Mass Transit Board? Because that's
Sorry?
finishing that. So my question is, that was what the Salem Area Mass Transit Board voted to support. Bless you.
Correct.
Sorry, Sadie, I couldn't hear you.
Yes, that's correct. That the facilitated process be used with the express desired outcome of arriving at an equitable and representative decision-making process.
Okay. So we need to reference that, but also say that this was the to reference the Salem Area Mass Transit Board minutes as a cross-reference, correct?
I don't know that that's necessary. I haven't seen references like that in our meeting minutes of the past, but if you feel that that's appropriate, I suppose we could.
I would feel more comfortable that for the clarification.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? All in favor? I guess I need a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I so move.
Oh, sorry. Second.
Moved by Director Carney, seconded by Councilor Phillips. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed signify by saying no. Hearing no objection, motion passes unanimously. And welcome to Della. Thank you. And who else got here? Lonnie. Lonnie is here. And Julie. Just so folks on camera know who's in the room. Okay, public comment. This one is provided for members of the public to address the policy committee on any matter related to MPO business. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the committee at this time? Okay, we will move on then to. And Mike, the thing we talked about, we can address that maybe under other business, or do you want to do it at the top? Because I think the conversation on the FAUB is going to be.
Yeah, I prefer to get the agenda items done first and then move to other business.
All right, sounds good. So with that, let's dive into the FAUB. Mr. Jackson.
So in your packet, there's this a memo that providing an overview of the federal aid urban boundary. And so in the presentation, I'll discuss why we're updating the FAUB at this time, when it's due, and the process that we're working on, and what areas are being considered, and also briefly touch on the federal functional that as well. We've talked about the Decennial Census a number of times this year and the changes that come out of it, including the urban areas and bringing in Almsville into the Salem urban area and thus into the MPO. And as part of this process, we're also required by federal law to move the defined urban areas into one boundary called the federal aid urban boundary. And this is used as part of process of when we're updating the looking at functional classification for all the roads to find which roads are urban, those inside the boundary, and those which are outside rural. And that's used for a number of programs within federal highway and with when people are using federal funds to build roads. The FAUB also informs what we will do later this year in revising where the MPO area boundary is, the MPA, and they're not the same. So the FAUB will be smaller, the MPA is a larger boundary, and that encompasses all the areas that we also takes in consideration the air quality boundary, which is a okay. So we have a compressed schedule. This is done every 10 years, and this time we have a shorter timeline just because the 2020 census was even early. The data came out late. Everyone and the federal highway and everyone's trying to get everything back onto sync somewhat. So at the July TAC and then the August TAC, we are talking about the FAUB, and we'll come up with a proposed FAUB for you to consider in August. For this month at the PC, we provided you an overview of the locations where the FAUB is being considered, where we need to make a decision about how to make the FAUB to connect the urban area parts. And then in August, you'll approve, endorse whatever that proposed FAUB is so that it can go to the go to ODOT by September 1st, so they can look at the proposals and ensure that we're compliant with federal guidelines, et cetera. And then in the September to December timeframe, ODOT reviews all the FAUBs and state, and they'll make any proposals about how they're going to revise the SKATS back to us. And we'll, then they send it to Federal Highway, who has the final decision by the end of this year. So as you see, it's rather brief period to discuss all this. So luckily, we don't have any long-range plans to talk about or anything else for this month and next month. We also are doing then this. So the FAUB is more involves the PC and involves the TAC. The functional classification review is more a technical project. The TAC review this, and so I'm talking with the TAC and other public works staff on, are there new roads that have have been built since 2010. Are there new roads that will be built in the next 5 years? Are the functional classifications of the roads still what they were last time we did this in 2013 or 14? And that has a briefer, that goes on a little bit longer, but a different project. So the FAUB distinguishes, as I said, between the two rural roads and urban roads. Federal funds are not available for local roads, whether they're urban or local, and they're not available for rural minor collectors. So if it's a rural road, federal funds are available if it's rural major collector and above, and these are federal functional classifications. Or they're available for urban minor collectors and above. And there are 15 areas in the area that the boundary modifications are being discussed. And then there are a number of little places that the consultants have identified in the area, which is mainly aligning the FAUB with a UGB, and these are smaller ones. And they're sometimes visible in these maps and sometimes not. So I could go through each one of these really quickly, and the packet took a while, even trying to go quickly. I could ask for questions on this or the process, or maybe highlight one or two places where questions are going on. So I know that, we are working with Marion County going forward for the last week or so, and we will through the TAC to address a lot of the areas that are within Marion County that they'd like to have addressed, because most of these areas are Marion County. The whole county, we've worked with Austin and the city of Salem about that location. Kaiser is already within the FAUB, so we haven't had a separate conversation. So I'm just going to point out a few of the locations briefly, and then you can ask questions. So the eastern boundary is identified as Golf Club Road, and the consultants. So because for all these maps, the blue is the urban area that's defined by the census. So that is immutable. We have to take it as long as it's not Staten or somebody else's. It says the census defines it as Salem's urban area, that's coming into the MPO. The blue stripe are the initial proposals by the consultants. So because we have a compressed time frame, the consultants were being helpful, and they went through and generated these proposed boundaries. And so we're reviewing them with the Public Works and TAC members, and then you guys next month. So don't take them as gospel. They are not set in stone yet. They're just, here's what they are suggesting based on federal guidelines and ease, and whether or not, like some of the little ones, I don't know if you can see this little one over here in Thomasville, mouse, there you go, where the UGB is below Mill Creek, but the census didn't define that as part of the urban area. So it's just filling in the federal aid urban boundary to where UGBs are. Golf Club Road will be the eastern boundary, and so that's, I think we can all agree that we don't want any part of more of the Staten UGB within this area. So we were just going to take the western side of the Golf Club 22 interchange. The Census Bureau has already defined it as within the Salem urban area. So I guess real quick question for y'all is, have you had a chance to look at these, and are there questions that you've had about any of them? And I see Kathy smiling, so I know yes there. Lyle or Trevor or not here, but we talk with Marion County a lot. So,
Yeah.
well, so what should I focus on in our limited time to make this more helpful for you? And for Almsville, would you like more explanations what goes on in that area?
So far, I'm okay.
Okay,
I will say the part that you have shaded up above on the left side,
mhm,
that is our industrial land and that is developed.
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it's inside the UGB, and that's the consultants are proposing to bring that into the urban area. So
I'm just letting you know, it's not bare farmland anymore. It is.
it is developed.
businesses in there.
Okay, that's good to know.
And that's the hatched area.
Yeah, on the left one, right
Right,
up there.
right.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Salem, which is
I know,
really
it's
confusing.
misleading. yeah.
Well, it's Almsville.
Yeah.
Okay,
but-
thank you.
It's Almsville, but it's the
It's
Salem
Salem.
urban area.
Yeah.
And it's a label I can't take off the mapping software because it's the mapping software identifies.
Anything blue is in.
Yeah, everything. And
I got that part. It's just,
It's all called Salem.
I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. It is misleading.
Yeah,
Just have
okay.
Salem right there in the middle.
that makes sense to me. Thank you.
And so, and then also it's the, the interchange up here at Highway.
Yeah.
That, the ramps.
And the benefit of that is making sure that if there's federal funds, because it is inside an urbanized area, that becomes available, right?
Correct. And well, and also, well, it's to have the complete interchange in. The only one interchanges we don't want the complete one in is Golf Club.
Right.
So all the other ones, Brook Lake, Shaw, whatever else is on Joseph, Silver Falls Highway, a little bit up. So this one, Silver Falls Highway is this road. And then, making sure we have the complete interchange, just in case somebody, in this case, ODOT, goes through and does something and.
Right. So the whole project can be funded. Director Carney,
Thank you, Chair Clark. So Mike, if I'm following, and please steer me back on course if I'm not, the staff report says that at a minimum, federal requirements are that the FAUB need to encompass the urban area as defined in the recent census. And everything that we're looking at in blue is that, right? It's
Correct.
the urban area as defined in the recent census. But we have the latitude and authority to draw the line in a way that makes sense. It pulls in whole intersections, but it also brings in other relatively urbanized areas. But there's a lot of like relative in the staff report. It's like mostly urban uses and mostly rural uses. So it's a little bit fuzzy. So that's where we have that, that's the decision that
Yeah.
we're making.
We have latitude, yes. So keep in mind that the process is national. And, we have UGBs here and most states don't. So when we think about urban area, we're all, some of us are thinking UGBs already, and that's encompassing.
stand by. I just got a text from Commissioner Cameron. He couldn't get into the meeting, so he's on the way. He's on his way to for some personal business. He says the urban standard between Battle Creek and Delaney Road all the way into Turner is something that he doesn't support.
Yeah, no, not that.
Please communicate that.
That's been clear from Marion County, and that also, yeah. So,
And Ray, before we go on, Sadie was saying is, for the ultimate authority, where what's in is out, this is more collaborative. I mean, we are providing our input, right, but it'll go to ODOT, it'll go to Federal Highway. We don't have the ultimate decision.
we have,
Federal Highway does.
correct,
Mhm.
yes. Federal Highway has the ultimate decision because it's their guidelines. We provide a recommendation to ODOT to provide to Federal Highway of where these go based on local knowledge of the situation.
So if I could give an example, Director Carney, last time there was a small road that was recommended to be included in the FAUB, and I knew for a fact that there was a road that would never be developed because it was wholly encased in parkland. So we made the case for it not being included and it was not. So, and it's
Okay.
still not because that, I don't see that part of Kaiser with a little crosshatch. So that's where our recommendations and our local knowledge can be of assistance in the final outline.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Gotcha. And yeah, no, and I'm hoping to, because I'm glad that I'm tracking correctly. And like an argument for including everything in the gray hash or the blue hash would be that then we have more roadway eligible for federal funding. But the counter argument would be then you're spreading the funding thinner.
Well, the roads outside the FAUB are still available for federal funds. As long as they are rural major collectors and above.
Okay,
So this, is when we draw the MPO boundary, that will decide where our funds will be able to be spent. Our federal funds will be spent. This is more this is more the process of defining which ones are urban versus rural to keep that. So if there are like on this map, what are we looking at? There are some minor collectors that, down here, 71st, the street is going north-south, and is part of Jordan, which is going east-west, that are minor collectors. If they were rural, they would not be eligible for federal funds. If they are outside the federal aid urban boundary, even if they're inside the MPO. But if they're inside the MPO and inside the FAUB, then as a minor collector, they would be eligible for federal funds. And so part of the discussion with Marion County staff is also, are the roads going to develop in 10 years? Is the area urban? And I put that in air quotes because we know it's, urban in the national sense, but maybe not in the Oregon sense. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit. And I know Trevor has a question as well.
Councilor Phillips? Thanks
Yeah,
for your
thank you.
patience.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. So on this map, just to use it as an example, since it's up, is the current proposal that we include the diagonal blue lines in this FAUB designation?
That is the consultant's proposal.
Okay.
But yeah, nothing's in stone yet.
No, nothing's in stone, but that's kind of what we're gonna choose, is probably to include most of these, except with maybe the exception that was pointed out by Commissioner Cameron.
Well, there are a number of areas, and especially in the southeast. Let me go to a different view of this. Okay, so this is roughly the same area and this is map 15 and in your pamphlets or whatever this is. Packets. So this is the area that we're talking with Marion County about how much or how little to bring in to ensure that A, we meet federal regs, B, connect the blue areas with the major blue area to the north, left of your screen. So we have Almsville on the right side and Turner on the south. And so we need to connect those with Salem in a way that hopefully minimizes the number of roads that we bring in or that aren't going to develop or that, or outside of all the UGB as well. And so that's part of the discussion. So Delaney Battle Creek area is also an example, as Commissioner Cameron mentioned. So this area, you can see is outside of Salem's UGB, which is shown on purple in all these maps. And is not part of the Salem urban area. So we'll probably have a proposal that comes down to connect Turner along Turner Road for some amount of space. We haven't decided how, what to propose yet, but leave that area to the west, west of Turner and east of I-5, south of Wiltsey and north of Delaney, that's currently outside the FAUB, and currently outside the new urban area, to keep it outside the FAUB.
Thank you.
Okay, and then, yeah, no, I thank you. The map is very helpful and it confirms what I thought we were talking about.
Yep.
Can we go back to, you went through it and 9 has a couple, 9 has like.
Yes.
So what, I mean, I think I remember voting on this, but is this light blue, the one you just had, that, what is that in this?
Okay, so this is a good clarification. So apparently Salem has parts of their city limits outside the UGB. And the consultants only looked at UGBs and not city limits because they were under the assumption that all city limits are within UGBs. Not correct. So we confirmed this with Salem staff behind my back here. And we are going to propose to include the city limits within the FAUB.
So is it, we really do have an area that is outside the UGB, but is within Salem city limits?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and that's what this like, the different colored blue is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I would agree that if something's in the city limits, it should be included.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what we're doing with this?
And that's what we're doing with that one, yes.
Okay.
That's roughly the correct size, so when we send in the recommendation, it will follow the Salem city limits precisely. So, yeah, number 9 also has, we were talking with full county staff and Salem staff about how to include Marine Drive. You'll see on some of these, the maps, the proposed, there's a proposed line, and then it says proposed. That's roads that have been proposed in the past to be, that will be built. So alignment for Marine Drive was obviously just sketched in very sketchily. And we will provide the consultants with a better alignment. And this is trying to include the areas that Marine Drive will be the correct Marine Drive alignment included in the FAUB. Currently, this isn't an issue because this entire area is already in the current FAUB, but with the new urban areas, this was not defined as urban, so.
Ray, can I interject just a second? Just want to make sure the committee knows that we're not just talking about where the SKATS MPO funds could be used. Marion County has federal funds that it could use, so they have an interest beyond what SKATS does to say, you know, where would they want to maybe use their federal funds on county roads? So you have to think about that as part of the whole process. And of course, ODOT might have funds they would use outside our normal MPO boundary. So that's part of the reason why Marion County has a big interest in determining where that FAUB boundary is. I have a question though. If you remove that area that you said would be removed, Ray, the one that's like near Battle Creek and Delaney, would that negate the county from coming to us to do anything on Delaney Road?
No, because it's an arterial.
Yeah, it's above them.
So one of the benefits, I'm sorry. One of the benefits of being in the FAUB is to be eligible for funding, but that really only applies to minor collectors. As Ray was saying, major collectors, any arterials are eligible regardless of whether they're in the FAUB.
Right.
And Delaney is an arterial.
And currently this area is outside the current FAUB. It's inside the MPO because the boundary of the MPO is Delaney's Road. Okay. So it's not an issue for that project.
So this would be a location where we might lose some of this land that's in the FAUB, but still retain it in the development planning area.
We're not losing that because it's not in it.
Oh, okay, but not included.
For the funds that we've already, because we have the Delaney Bridge and the potential Delaney Road project as well.
Yeah.
But this does not change the eligibility for.
Correct. Okay. And the MPO boundary won't change here because I have to go check because when we're looking at the MPO boundary, we're also looking at where the air quality boundary is. And it's around there someplace, but I don't remember how it zigs. So we probably just keep that in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we have this, you know, our favorite mini home development along I-5. That is shown in more detail on map. Wow.
Well, it's right there. Isn't that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
That blue there?
It's blue here. I have another map that shows it in more detail, but
So how does that connect in?
so the current thinking.
And then I'll
is-
go to Director Carney after this.
Yeah, well, it's coming down, just having that extension covering I-5.
Okay,
So you can see the UGB here,
kind of.
kind of. So the UGB is this purple line. Right, so we'd include this area, and then we'd also come down and, you know, however wide it needs to be to take I-5 down to the Delaney interchange, take the entire interchange, and then connect to this blue blob that is south of the Delaney Road interchange.
And then take out the section that Commissioner Cameron was referring to, north of Delaney, east of I-5,
And that's all
south of
this-
Wilsey.
Yeah,
all of that.
that's all this would be not included.
Okay, and then what about the west of I-5, over to Sunnyside? Would that also be deleted? 'Cause that's a really hilly area.
That's a discussion.
I know that from talking to Commissioner Cameron, he would likely want that.
Yeah, I can see it.
at least
Proposing
outside
it
of
not to
UGB.
be, yeah, it's outside the UGB,
Well, the part, yeah. there's
yeah,
part
and
of
well,
it.
part of it's outside the UGB, and it's, you know, one of the federal regulation, guidance is roads that don't go in and out of the FAUB. But, you know, how far is the distance that it can go, you know, it's obviously Delaney is in Turner and out here, that's fine. So there's, you know, we'll propose 98% sure, propose that west side not to be included, because it is outside the UGB. But, you know, we don't know what federal highway will say in the end.
And then one more question, I'll go to Director Carney. East of Rainbow, how far does that go?
Which one's Rainbow?
It's
All the way on the left.
all the way to the left.
Oh, on the map,
Yeah, there it is.
this one.
Yeah.
So,
That's all, houses now, isn't it?
I have to look at their maps. States.
Huh?
States.
Yeah.
Down here, down in this, sorry, my mouse.
There we go. Yeah, that crosshatch area there. Isn't that all developed residential now?
Rural residential.
Oh,
Rural
Yeah,
residential.
I think, are you thinking of the brand new subdivision?
Yep,
It's inside the UGB.
okay.
Yep, right there.
right up
That
there.
one, so that definitely would need to come in. That's inside the UGB, and that's something Salem wants to see happen. The rest of it is a question mark, or is that something you're just gonna propose to square it up?
That's a discussion with Mary.
Gotcha.
So it could be leave out this part in the south and keep this part up here next to it, or it could be leave it all out. That's next week's discussion with staff.
Oh, good times to be had by all. Director Carney, actually, I'm gonna go to Brandon Williams really quick and then circle back to you, Director. Brandon?
Thank you. And mine's kind of a short point, just wanted to bring up one other implication downstream of our discussion here about where the FAUB boundary lies is besides federal funding, and that may include emergency funding related to FEMA for areas that are within the FAUB. Design standards is also an important implication that is going to affect local jurisdictions. So if like I've heard examples of some roads where it's entirely impractical due to the geography of the area, steep slopes or other concerns, it would not be practical or even in the best interest of that local jurisdiction to recommend it be included in the FAUB, because then if the road were upgraded, they would have to follow urban design standards or seek an exception from ODOT. So it does create a bit of an onus for areas if we know in consulting with local government are not practical or serving as an urban road, that they should not be within the FAUB.
Thank you, Brandon, for that. Can I just add on to that, just so we can picture it? If we didn't get that exception, that would require Delaney from Turner all the way to Sunnyside, we have, we follow urban standards with bike lanes and sidewalks.
Oh, Lord.
In this hypothetical situation, that could be a possibility. If so we're talking about hypothetical, if a design exception were requested and denied. So what I'm doing here on my end is a little bit of a look into what the design exception process looks like for ODOT and working with mostly Marion County at this point on what some of those concerns are. But I just wanted to bring up that design standard part as part of the conversation that I hadn't heard yet.
I really appreciate that, Brandon. I also want to add that with design exceptions, the agencies take on liabilities. Because in the event that ODOT and Marion County both moved ahead with a design exception on Delaney Road, so we didn't have to do urban standards, we followed rural standards without bike lanes and pedestrian facilities. Should there be a pedestrian crash, I would likely be held liable for deviating from our urban standards, and the county would be more liable for having a design exception that maybe isn't really, you know, legal can argue what they want, and they could show that it wasn't a good place to deviate from the standards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I hear that as a potential valid concern. And sorry, I'm not that in the weeds on the stuff to know a clear answer, but I definitely hear your concern about that.
Thank you, Brandon.
Carney?
Thank you, Brandon. That was really helpful. My question is really, I think, pretty general. And that is, it looks like on, I think it was slide 9 and yeah, both of 9s. I'm curious why it looks as if the Willamette River has not previously been included. And then there's the Minto Island Park coming in down in the south part where it looks like it really widens out there. But is there a reason to bring in the waterway?
So what we're showing is just the urban area, the blue urban area comes from the 2020 census. Previously, this entire area was in the FAUB. For our new FAUB, the consultants are aligning the federal aid urban boundary with the UGB, and the UGB goes down the middle of the river. And for reasons, you'd have to ask city staff, either or DLCD or somebody. I don't know why, but that's why.
Can you go to the revised, number 9 revised?
Oh, well, I mean, in all of them. So you can see, yeah, the purple is the UGB. And
Okay.
that's where it's defined. I don't know.
Okay.
So there are a number of places where they're just aligning the FAUB with the UGB because it sort of makes sense. It does make sense. So
I just wondered if there were any like strategic implications to, you know what I mean? Like, if we bring in the river, then we can, potentially propose federal funding for this, that, and the other, but okay.
no, it's just, this is purely following the UGB. Trevor or Lyle, or did you have a question, or were you?
Yes, so real quick, in 9 revised, the reason I put the red line across is that matches our master transportation plan and also Salem's transportation plan. So as they expand in projects, this will already be included. It'll be easier going forward in the future.
Counselor Phillips?
Yeah, actually on this one and the one before, with that weird blue again. You can see it on both the one before this and this one with the blue. So the area that's in the special blue, that's inside the city limits, but outside the urban growth boundary. I mean, this is an area with hills, but like as the city, do we really have a choice to not include this? I appreciated the comments from Brandon Williams. So I would probably rely heavily on staff to need to know, like, I don't want to do an own goal.
Yeah, I believe that staff recommended that it be included, and I'm staring at Julie right now, and she nodded. So
Okay.
both her and Lisa's agreed that it would be appropriate to bring it at that
And
part of the city limits into the FAUB.
perfect. And then I have like another, questions probably outside of the scope of this, but I know that like city council has approved the beginning of an application process. So there's some quarries that are filled with water just to the north of where some of those red lines were on the other slide without the special below this one. So we're in our aspirational goal, we might create a Minto Brown like park area north of Wallace Marine, in this area where you're putting your mouse cursor. And I just want to make sure that this is the way to do it by not including it in the FAUB. Like, I don't want to mess up that process of, preserving some natural space.
I don't think it would make a
Okay.
It doesn't affect land use, yeah.
Yeah, because this is just for mainly roads, and maybe Brandon knows, I don't think it involves any other federal funding other than FEMA.
Bridge.
Okay.
That was
Thank-
Lonnie.
So Brandon, yeah.
So yeah, I apologize. I need to just pull up the fact sheet and I'll echo what those various federal funding implications were in addition to FEMA. I think one thing I just wanted to make kind of clear, or at least get it out there, is when we talk about the urban growth boundaries, it's an important consideration in the work we're doing. But please do keep in mind that the urban growth boundaries are a state process that helps us to kind of look at and plan for areas where we anticipate development in a long-term outlook. So I just wanted to voice kind of to the committee here and to also see if there's any feedback. There was general agreement amongst, from what I heard in our conversations with local partners, that including the areas, all areas within the UGB was a good practice because of that alignment we're looking at where development's likely to occur. The bigger question is going to be those little areas that are outside of the UGB. We want to work closely with local government to understand, is this appropriate to designate as an urban roadway?
Thank you for that.
So just making sure that, Commissioner Cameron's and, okay, this has all been
Yeah.
good. It's all noted for the record.
We're getting good communication with Marion County staff.
I'm sure very thorough communication.
Could be more clear.
No, I think you're crystal clear. I think thorough is. Yeah. So, I guess, let me skip ahead. If there are no other further questions on areas, discussion questions. And
Okay.
so that's it, apparently. So to reiterate, you'll see me next month. Same time, same channel, to talk about some proposals from the TAC about where these will be modified.
Okay.
And then we will ask you for an endorsement or approval, not a resolution. It doesn't, it's need a straight vote. And then it goes ODOT, and then we wait and see what happens, and then see what happens, and then we can go from there. And yes, Lonnie, lastly,
I would really like to thank you, Ray, Brandon, you and Mark Bernard for helping us through this process. It's definitely one of those things that's challenging when it's only done every 10 years. Not only do you have staff that's never done it before because we haven't been here for 10 years, but man, you're dusting off some old memories, right? If for people that have been here that long. So I just really appreciate the conversations we've had and the understanding of how we need to communicate with our elected officials. And so thank you for all of your help with all the information gathering you've been doing. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, great process, and we look forward to getting the finalized one next month. Awesome. Let's go on then to item E, which is sad day. Cancel the Mill Street Rail Crossing project from SKATS. fiscal year 21-26 tip. Steve.
Yeah, so this one is with a few packet items. I don't have slides, although I can share what's in the packet on the screen if that might be helpful since there's a locational component.
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, I'll throw that up there.
We like
Um,
pictures.
Yeah, so yeah, the purpose of this project or this amendment to the 21-26 tip is to remove a project that is funded. It's an ODOT project that's funded with railroad funds through the FAST Act. And the project itself was to create, you could see this little red marking here in the graphic. There was a crossing project to make improvements on the road approach for along Mill Street, and then also create a crossing from the Amtrak station to the Salem Promenade, which runs along 12th here, sort of north to south. Essentially, there were funds programmed for ODOT to complete the work, and the Union Pacific Railroad is not just here in Salem, but across the state and elsewhere, imposing maintenance fees for new crossing improvements, which is really unfortunate because it causes projects to go up in cost, and generally these maintenance fees are written to be in perpetuity, passed on to the local jurisdiction. The other aspect and reason for the cancellation, which I think in this case is even bigger than the maintenance fee, was that Union Pacific wanted to require signal improvements at all the crossings in the quiet zone, which I think is, maybe, I don't know the exact number, but I think approximately 6 or 8 crossings along downtown. So it would be just a big cost increase for the project. So at this point, we received this cancellation that came into the MPO for consideration. At this point, what I'm essentially asking is to approve the resolution to cancel the project. I didn't receive any public comments. This was posted for public comment. So that's kind of the issue at hand. And I think likely that's the action we need to take. The other part is that we can talk a little bit about kind of some of the ongoing issues related to railroad and working with railroad. I'm gonna stop sharing now. But this is I think one of several issues working with railroad that's faced by MPOs throughout the state and local communities. It's been a topic at the Oregon MPO Consortium, and as well as there was a process a couple years ago where the OMPOC staff at Lane Council of Governments collected information from all the MPOs throughout the state to just document rail issues and bring that conversation to the ODOT Rail Division. We do have, I think some regular communication going on with the Rail Division where they're trying to be more proactive and sort of chipping away at these harder issues of dealing with the railroads. I think at this point, I do have some other information that we could share as far as what the Rail Division's been working on, if folks want to get into that depth right now, or I can send some of that out through email after the meeting. Essentially, there's just some presentations about what ODOT Rail has been working on, as well as some letters to Congress raising some of these issues about increased costs and difficulty to generally work with the railroad. So I'll just kind of leave it there for now, and we can kind of discuss what we want to bring up with this.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there've been numerous OMPOC meetings on this topic. This is not unique to our area. This is statewide, it's probably national. And rail is a challenging partner. How about that? Any questions on this cancellation? Motion to adopt resolution 23-19 to cancel project key number 21238 Mill Street Southeast Rail Crossing from the SKATS federal fiscal year 2021 to 2026 year.
Also move.
Moved by Commissioner Morthorst,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Phillips. Any further discussion?
I
For the
would just,
record,
why is rail such a difficult partner in?
That's a good
all
question.
this? I mean, it just, there is, I know it's how the West was won, but like, can't we all, and it just does not seem that there is ever a place that you can even get them at the table. It's very frustrating.
I
Anyway,
second
My
that
discussion.
sentiment. This is a federal issue, unfortunately, and that's why we keep knocking ourselves against that brick wall. So. Anything further? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying no. Hearing no objection, motion passes unanimously. With sadness. Second row. Recently.
Marion County canceled that flat road.
Yeah. Doesn't need to be this way, but I know it's above my pay grade. It's gonna be interesting having the conversation about the west extension, because we're gonna be talking with rail again.
You know, it's almost who you get from the railroad to work with. My first call, I gotta get railroad to fix Rickrow Road. Because crossing almost throw you out of your truck, you have to stand at 25-30 to go across it. And they were there in 3 months and fixed it. Now we have another one, it's been 3 years. And they still haven't even acknowledged that we've sent a request.
No, that's the same company.
Same one.
Wow.
It's BNSF and Union Pacific are the two railroads that are requiring maintenance fees right now.
That's pretty much who we're dealing with. I mean, that's our
Yeah.
two main lines running
Yeah.
through the Salem Pasture area.
Smaller line.
Western. and
Portland Western is
But it's through
BNSF.
Polk County and.
Yeah, it's the same. They Portland Western uses BNSF rail line.
Okay. That's not something we're not gonna be able to solve today, unfortunately. Let's go on to item F is the tip modifications. Steve,
Okay, so this one should be short. I'll pull it up on the screen again. There's 6 modifications on the list. The first 2, and this is the last page of the packet if anyone's following along on their own. Let me try to make this a little bigger. Okay, so the first 2 we've discussed at the last, those were full amendments that were discussed at the last PC meeting in June. So you'll be familiar with the addition of funds to the preliminary engineering and right-of-way phases of Verda and the addition of the DEQ grant for the battery electric bus charging. The other 4 were administrative amendments to either push a project back or cancel a phase of a project that wasn't needed in one case. And those have been just at a staff level approved in the last month. So this is just the general report on tip activities since, well, I guess the end of June.
okay. Any questions on any of these? And I've actually got one. Given our just concluded conversation, item 3, the Salem Industrial Drive Northeast Rail Crossing. This is a repair project, right?
Yeah, I think that project is to combine 2 crossings. This is the description, the STIP description, so it's a little high level, but it's to combine 2 crossings into one set of train activated flashing lights and gates. I don't know if that includes like changing the track at all, or if it's just the signal equipment itself, but there's 2 tracks that cross sort of in short
For
distance to one another.
Yeah, so it's just getting rid of the lights in between. So it's making a bigger
Just one big chunk.
crossing.
Salem Industrial Drive.
Salem Industrial
What's
and,
across?
I'll pull it up here so you can see it.
so it's just going to be north of, Alberta, Hyacinth.
It's in here.
Where's that gully?
Let me reshare.
Yeah, sure, that's part of your screen.
Thought you were all seeing what I was seeing.
Do you see what I see?
That came to my mind too.
Okay, so
And I'm just curious here because it impacts traffic really significantly.
here's Salem Industrial Parkway. This is really nearby the Del Webb facility is right over here.
Gotcha, thank you.
And I think the reason there's two tracks is there's a little, here it is. There's a spur that comes off and goes into this industrial activity here. And so here's kind of the main line going.
Okay.
So I don't know, yeah,
So it's a main line and a spur. And you're gonna make it a one and done.
right. And so essentially what the amendment did was to push the project back because the, like we've seen with other projects in the MPO, the project cost was higher than expected. So this one is still going to happen. It's just been pushed back from 23 to 24 for the obligation of the construction phase.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Thank you for taking time to explain the project to me. I appreciate it. Okay, that makes safety sense. All right, anything else on the tip modifications? We're good. Let's go to other business. Just a brief overview. We'll be doing a Title VI review in September with the Policy Committee, the Oregon Transportation Commission. Their next meeting is September 14th in Eugene. Our next policy meeting will be on August 22nd, and the TAC will meet on August 8th. And just so folks know, the OMPOC meeting at the end of July was canceled. There just really wasn't anything to talk about. Still doing kind of a review after the legislative session, and we'll have a more in-depth conversation at the scheduled meeting in October. You have the planning status update here. And the question was raised in an email about adding a line probably to talk about our SKATS, what's it called, charter?
The composition, I would say, MPO composition.
Before
we move on, just one correction on that planning status update.
Yes.
So that first one about the Corden-Kubler plan, it's out for internal review by the consultant to the, I guess, members. It's not out for public review.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Do we know when we think it'll be out for public review?
It doesn't sound like it's going out for public review. Janelle can speak to it, but it sounds like it was just going to be going to the board after this.
Oh. Has it already been out on public review?
Well, it's had 2 open houses.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Looks like we're getting a presentation.
Yeah,
September.
that's the plan. Once the study's been internally reviewed and I guess preliminary approved, we'll present it to SKATS.
Appreciate that. Thank you. That's a significant addition to our urbanized area is the development of the Kubler interchange. And it's been problematic for sure. With the geography. Thank you for that. And then we've been talking about obtaining a facilitator. There's 2 issues at hand. One is obviously we're bringing in OMSO to SKATS, and then looking taking time to look at the charter in terms of how we operate, and just having that conversation and see if there's any changes that we want to make, or if we're good to go, but to bring everybody up to speed, just put a put it into the list here.
What topic?
The composition
Oh,
is.
in the status update?
Right. So that way, because there was a question about when that was going to happen. There was an email going, well, why isn't it today? It's like, we said it wasn't. But it is.
Yeah, this is gonna take some time. I want to be perfectly honest. This is a very complicated topic. It's also kind of a charged topic. I want us to be ready for that discussion. I can give a little update of what I've been working on. Primarily, I've been focusing on potential facilitators and getting people's recommendations of who to contact, then trying to contact those people and then having some discussions. I haven't contacted everyone who I've been recommended to, but I've talked to the Oregon Census Center. I've talked to LOC. I've talked to some private facilitators. I've got more on my list to contact, so I'm trying to come up with the choices or the options for this group to consider as who they want as a facilitator. And then I have been digging a little bit deeper into the regulations and I'm getting some internal help regarding the regulations and our interpretation of those regulations, looking at other MPOs and how they're composed. So there's a lot of pieces to this whole puzzle, and that's why there isn't something today to answer everything, although I could try to answer questions if people have questions.
One of the questions that was also raised was about the involvement of our tribal nations. Both are already represented on their acts. So the Siletz are on it's the one that includes Lincoln County.
Coastal.
Yeah, the coastal act, and then Grand Ronde is on the New-Willamette Area Commission on Transportation. That said, the acts are a way different beast than the MPO. And in my brief conversation with the chair of the Siletz, they are not a transportation provider. So they had a question about what and why, since that would be a very different role for them. So that said, that conversation can be had with the tribal leadership on what the rational nexus is for involvement in MPOs, and if there's other MPOs in which the tribal nations have engaged. But the Siletz looked genuinely surprised when I talked to the leadership there. Like, we don't build roads.
Chair Clark, could you just remind me what an act is and what the authority is there?
The Area Commission on Transportation, those were created by the Oregon Transportation Commission. There are 12 across the state that include all corners of the state. They are advisory to the Oregon Transportation Commission. The only time they have any sort of authority is when they are being used by the OTC in an advisory capacity. For example, in the Connect Oregon, the acts were used to rank and vet the projects that were then elevated for consideration to the Oregon Transportation Commission. It is completely separate from the MPO process, which is federal, and that we then are actually through the COG delegating, allocating federal funding for projects in the urbanized area. Hence this whole conversation around FAUB, et cetera, et cetera. These are all federal designations, and they are not governed by the state.
Yeah, and just great, not through the COG, but the MPO makes decisions and the ODOT kind of implements them through their TIP and STIPs.
Right. The COG is the your administrative
For running this MPO
right
function, yeah.
with all the expertise. Yes.
And just to clarify, because it was like a run-on sentence email that I sent on a Friday. I was wondering too about, mainly I was wondering about the, I forgot what it was worded in the cooperative agreement, because I think it was like Turner and the school district didn't have signatory, and I just definitely wanted some clarification on that, because I know that I think that's more internal, right?
I could give you a preliminary answer. I kind of want to vet it a little bit with other people, but I think it has to do with how the federal regulations specify how MPOs are formed. And let me share my screen in this.
And just to note, Brandon put some information in the chat regarding what an act is and the link to the Oregon Transportation Commission website, which has a very good description about what they are and why they exist. And we're in the process, just as while Mike brings up his screen, all of the acts have been charged with creating a 2-year work plan. So we have the steering committee working on that right now, and we'll be bringing it back to the act. And all the jurisdictions present here. The school, I don't think the school district has representation on the act, but the rest of us do. In one form or another for our 3-county act, Marion, Polk, Yam Hill.
I think you're right.
I think the school district is represented more in terms of Marion County and looking at the whole of the counties.
So I'm going to reference this federal regulation 450.310 and B. So when an MPO is designated, it's an agreement between the governor and the units of general purpose local governments. That's an important phrase, general purpose local governments, which are, and there's federal law that kind of describes general purpose local governments separate from special districts. So a city, a county, a township is a general purpose local government. So it's an agreement between the governor and the units of general purpose local governments that together represent at least 75% of the affected population. So as I said, the original agreement was made with City of Salem, Kaiser, the 2 counties, and they had to be signatories for this. The transit district didn't have to be a signatory, although they did sign. And part of that reason they're a little different is because if I scroll down here, who should be on the TMA? It also includes its local officials, but officials of public agencies that administer or operate major modes of transportation in the metropolitan area, including representation by providers of public transportation. So they are included. Every MPO is a little different. In Corvallis, the city of Corvallis runs the transit, so they don't have a separate district. So that's why the transit district is included. My interpretation is they didn't have to be signatories to that agreement, to our current agreement, but they are, they are signatories. The school district it was added to the MPO board. I don't think they had to be signatories either. And then Turner is a general purpose government, so they were signatories.
No, I
Yeah.
mostly just want clarity for like the school district in terms of like what our responsibilities are with like the MPO and like, I mean, the clarification on the signatories is like, I mean, are there some decisions that ultimately like the district doesn't, like y'all wouldn't need our vote on, or like really like what it all
There
means?
is, if you look at the cooperative agreement, which I don't have in front of me, unfortunately, but if there is a process that I don't think we've ever used in my 30 years of being here, but if there's disagreement about approving the long-term plan or the TIP among the board and they couldn't resolve it internally, there's a process to go back to the local jurisdictions, which I think included just the major ones, the Salem, Kaiser, and the 2 counties. I don't think it included the transit district, and I don't think it includes the school district. So if we ever in a process where they had to go back to the boards and the boards voted the way they want, and they come back, the school district would not be involved in that first process of going to your board to ask for a vote.
So I guess, long story short, the school district could make things really difficult, but then it would ultimately like shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah. So there, and then we could talk about, I'm sure we'll talk about more of this when we get into the discussion about whole composition, but just keep in your mind that there are the distinction in federal guidelines, or sorry, not guidelines, but regulations about general purpose governments versus not the other kind, which are special districts. And so they made that distinction for a purpose. And I think that will be important to remember later on. You know, why it's called, why the regulations are written that way.
And if I may, we've had this discussion a few times over the years about the purpose for the school district be involved, and one of the early things was, the yellow buses. But it's a whole lot more than that. So many of the projects that we have worked on here over the years have been multimodal with a focus on a school area. The Auburn project was clearly centered around the Auburn Elementary School, but that whole corridor needed the full improvement for interoperability and safety. Brown Road, as Sunnyview, a lot of those projects, again, you're connecting not just, you're connecting neighborhoods and a real eye to safe routes to school and the ability for students to be able to walk and roll safely to their schools and other destinations. In Kaiser, we keep on looking for projects for Kennedy and trying to push for that, the same idea. So I think in my experience, having a representative of the school district in this conversation has really helped us focus on the neighborhood aspect of our transportation planning and keeping that lens at the table. So I think it's rather than say, shoot yourself in the foot, it's actually been part of the collaborative conversation around multimodal transportation that has been a plus in my book for the last 17 years of work.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm like such a strong proponent of like the pedestrian and bicycle safety. Cause like, I mean, I definitely see, I know last year we had to approve a supplemental transportation plan for reimbursement because, we have those boundaries of kids living such a distance from the school and like, can we bus them? Can we not? But there's some places that it's just not safe, particularly along like Cordon Road being one of those.
Right, and the Verta project, that feeds into 2 Title I schools, and completing that system will make it possible for students to be able to walk and roll safely to those schools, where right now we have major gaps because we're retrofitting in Old County Road. Wheatland's gonna be the same thing, but we've got those spots all over town, and I think that has really informed a lot of our conversation over the years about how do we get the biggest value to a neighborhood, to a section of town by completing a whole corridor rather than doing onesie twosie or a sidewalk. I got it. I don't. They don't use it. So anyway, so I digress, but that having the school district present to bring that lens has been very important for our collaborative conversation. So thank you, Mike, for this very, very helpful background information. I would encourage everyone to be familiar with the MPO requirements. We are operating under federal requirements, also federal grant obligations. So we have to be really cognizant with the projects that are moving through as they get to us and through our TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, that we're really aware that this is all complying with federal guidelines and regulations to bring these dollars into the area, and that we're obliged to finish the projects. Giving it back is really not something that any of us want to do. But I think we have to be very aware of our grant obligations. And I'm looking at Anna, who's giving me the
No one wants to give money back.
No, we want to get more money. And one of the things we're good at, ODOT's really good at, is leveraging funds from other states that they don't finish spending down. ODOT's really good at snagging up those dollars, going, hey, we used ours and we know how to use more, and bringing those dollars into Oregon. We did the same thing at aviation. We leverage unobligated dollars from other states and bring them into Oregon to work for us.
I have one thing I wanted to share with the MPO, because the projects inside the MPO is that we've been chosen the I-5 Kugler to Delaney project. So as you know, we're going to construction on the southbound lanes, hopefully, this year.
Yes.
Yes, we're waiting for community workforce agreement approval from Federal Highway, but we're super close. Which is I think $40 million federal obligation for ODOT. If we miss that, that's not good. So, but we've been chosen for the northbound lanes to apply for an infra grant. So we're working on that right now. August 21st is the deadline. It's really short turnaround time for us, but so it's a 20%, a 40% match. So We had to come up with $15 million of state funding, which is out of the IIJA discretionary fund that they set aside for grant applications for state match. And we're applying for, I think, 22 million. So that would finish design for the northbound. We already have environmental done. We've already done right-of-way purchase. And so we'll just be design and construction of northbound widening. So that's a good thing. Anyway, we'll keep you up to speed on that.
Oh, that's fantastic news.
Well, it's a good candidate. We'll see. I mean, you know, we tried, I don't know, 2 or 3 times for Aurora Donald to get them for grants, so.
Letters of support.
Yes. We'll be contacting.
Okay.
Or
and
Andrew
SKATS
will.
too.
Yes.
Yeah, I've already talked to Andrew from
Okay.
the county. I mean, we're waiting to get more. I mean, yeah,
We
we're
have a
obviously
draft
going to
letter.
get-
We just didn't get it to you. So yeah, we'd ask for a letter of support from MWAC and probably SKATS. Possible.
You need it?
We don't need the letter of support till after August 21st. That we can just load those into our website. They're not due by August 21st, but we'll get you a draft.
I'd like a draft to give at least to the chair, if not the whole committee, to say
Yes.
this is what we're sending in as a letter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The
Thank
vice
you.
chair, yeah.
Yeah, if you support it, yes.
Yeah, I know it's not on the agenda, but please keep this in mind for August for supporting this major project for our region. And see if we can get some more federal money coming in here. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
We've got a few items not on the agenda.
All
particularly.
right. Are we good? Are we good with the information on moving forward with our MPO conversation? And that we'll be tracking that through our planning. Everybody good? Okay, go.
Couple things. One, MWAC meeting is August 6th, I believe. No, 3rd.
August 3rd.
And the agenda hasn't gone out yet, but we will be getting a presentation on the Center Street seismic upgrade. So many of you are members of the MWAC, but if you're not members, you're welcome to tune in person or through the Zoom. I think it would be interesting to hear that update. Second thing is just driving around this summer, seeing the projects under construction that are mostly joint projects between the MPO, us providing the funding. We don't do any of the design work, of course, but projects like Hayesville Drive's been going full tilt for several months.
Yes.
I can only go one direction on that road.
Same for Hollywood.
Hollywood, I just noticed yesterday when I was at Chemeketa, is got barriers and things going on there for the sidewalks and the corners and the signals going in there, I believe.
Eventually,
right?
yeah.
And then where also Union Street, the Union Street project downtown or north downtown with the city of Salem, we have a lot of funds in there and so is the city, so that's getting done. And I think there's a crossing on Lancaster that looks to be.
Are you thinking down at Senator Monroe?
No, the
No,
Lancaster
no.
one is that's city funding.
That's city funding.
Yeah, the
Okay.
one up by Carolina.
It
Or the
was
Walmart.
like, I think near Big Five Hamburgers where I ate dinner last.
Fine dining.
I wasn't sure if that's one of the crossings the city funded or one we contributed.
That guy?
Oh.
I don't think I got one there.
I don't know.
Big five.
Yeah, yeah.
Crossing.
It might just be a ramp project, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's here.
Well, this with the county doing Lancaster, there's a lot of,
Senator Monroe.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
sidewalk and.
Okay.
And there's a new crossing there, or there's a median that'll be going in there just at Monroe.
Yeah. So it's exciting to see all these projects that have been in the project planning and project development in our tip for years, and finally they're getting constructed this summer.
That is fantastic news. And we're
We Probably
putting,
left off others, but
we're putting a rapid flashing beacon. I think it's the first one in the city limits of Kaiser. It won't be the last one. That was going in by Chihuahua and Rickman by City Hall. So it's gonna make it much safer to cross there. We're doing a study to look at the section of Vernon that's not included in the project on what we can do for safe crossing, safe routes to school, to Kennedy. And Janelle, I need that link for the grant program you were telling me about. If you would send that to me, please.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yeah, if you get that to me.
That would
Okay,
be-
Lonnie's
yep.
gonna get that to me.
Yep.
But anyway, great projects going on all over town and, people complaining about construction zones, and that's a good thing.
Sometimes, yeah.
So they complain when it's not done, they complain while it's being done, and some people will complain when it is done, so.
Oh, I-5 Santiam to Kubler, we're doing right now paving I-5 is, we just got notification, you probably saw it, but they're gonna be closing the Kubler. That's not true at all. Mission Street on ramp at exit, so 253 southbound. Exit 253, or is it 252? I always get confused, three things. Exit 253 southbound at night, exit, the on ramp will be closed for paving.
All right,
So
maintenance.
One more.
Let's
one
go to
more
the
thing.
order.
To the order, we did meet with the Transportation Safety Action Plan. We did meet with our steering committee, I think that was on the 13th. Yeah, the 13th, and making good progress on that project. Still working on policy issues, also working on the selection of 10 locations that the consultant's going to give potential recommendations. Also non-infrastructure type recommendations, systemic safety projects. So there's a lot of work going on right now, making good progress. We will have another open house. We also have to figure out when we're going to come to the policy committee and kind of give you a midterm update on that study. So be prepared for something like that potentially in the fall. And the project should be wrapped up. We're a little, maybe a month behind our schedule, but won't be a problem. But we'll have another open house maybe in January, and then wrapping up April, May of next year.
All right, fantastic. Anything else today? I want to thank you all for your work and wish you all the best with the remainder of the summer. We'll see you next month. The time is 1:24. We are adjourned.